one, and I've got Ms. Rogers. Who do we have at this table right now? We've got.
This is Ms. Caldwell with me here.
Okay, Ms. Caldwell, and then is Katasha Rogers here? She
is virtual, and so is Representative Kristen Bonner.
Okay. Do you have? Okay, Representative Bonner, we do have. We don't. Ms. Rogers signed up in person, not virtually. You have her too. Okay, we've got your three sponsor panelists now, and so why don't we start with you presenting Senate Bill 121, and then we'll take the sponsor panelists, then we'll move on. There's some additional witnesses who've signed up. Okay, Senator Hester.
Thank you very much, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair McKagan, and members of the committee for your consideration of Senate Bill 121, which would allow public servants to request that their personal information not be published on the internet, social media, or social networks, and request the removal of previous publications of their personal information. Fundamentally, colleagues, this is about our safety and other elected officials' safety and that of our families. In July 2025, Vance Bolter, a Minnesota resident, carried out a targeted act of political violence, shooting Minnesota Senator John Hoffman and his wife, Yvette Hoffman, and killing former Minnesota House Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark Hortman, in their homes. My heart goes out to the Hortman and the Hoffman families for their unimaginable loss and suffering. We honor the memory of Melissa and Mark. Today, you'll hear from a dear friend of mine, Representative Kristen Bonner, about her personal experience in this tragedy in Minnesota. Bolter had used a publicly accessible data broker website to obtain personal information about these lawmakers, including their addresses, their phone numbers, and details about their families. Upon his arrest, authorities discovered a notebook in his possession containing the names of 45 additional Democratic legislators, as well as multiple public databases where these information could be found. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Superintendent Drew Evans indicated that without intervention, the violence could have continued. This tragic event underscores the grave risks faced by all of us, public officials, and reinforces the urgent need for enhanced security measures for those in public service, whose roles inherently place them in the public eye and often expose them to targeted threats. Colleagues, unfortunately, these tragic events in Minnesota are not isolated. Rather, they're part of a broader, concerning trend of escalating political violence and polarization. According to a January 2025 report from the Brennan Center for Justice, over 40% of lawmakers surveyed indicated they had experienced threats or attacks in the past 3 years. 40%, colleagues. This growing threat has created an atmosphere of fear, discouraging both prospective and current legislators from continuing public service. In Maryland, this reality became painfully clear when many lawmakers questioning whether their risks to their personal safety make public office worth the cost to them and their families. And this concern is not unfounded. In September of 2025, both House Speaker Adrian Jones and Senate President Bill Ferguson received bomb threats at their homes. This highlights the critical need for legislation that ensures the safety and security of public officials whose roles inherently place them at risk. Over the summer, I got connected with a company called Delete Me, one of several organizations that contracts with government entities to take public information down. They offered me a free trial to see how their program works and how pervasive this information is across the web. And there were 3 slides I wanted to share. I don't know if
it's in the packet.
It's in the packet. So they have it?
Yep, I'll pass back just in case.
Okay, on the first slide, what you see is the initial exposure audit that Delete Me did. They identified an alarming volume of exposed data points, including private home addresses, mobile phone numbers, and interactive maps to previous addresses. The baseline state was assessed as highly vulnerable. So specifically, my baseline status was highly vulnerable, with 637 exposed pieces of PII. On slide 2, what you will see is that after 5 of these reporting cycles where Delete Me had scrubbed and removed my information, they were able to reduce my PII exposure by 97%. from 636 exposed pieces of PII to just 18. One thing was very clear from this trial. Our information is out there for people to find. However, we aren't left helpless, and this legislation will give us a legal mechanism to get our information out of the reach of bad actors. So Senate Bill 121 addresses this critical concern in several ways. First of all, it defines protected individuals as those working in the service of the state, including prosecutors, law enforcement, elected officials, and their household members, and specifies what personal information may not be publicly disclosed without consent. Second, it authorizes protected individuals to request non-publication of private information or removal within 72 hours of already published private information. And third, it allows for a protected individual to bring action for relief in the event of a violation. And it allows for the possibility of punitive damages if an individual willingly refuses to remove sensitive information. Last but not least, it establishes the Public Servant Address Confidentiality Program to be administered by the Secretary of State, allowing protected individuals to publish approved and substitute addresses in place of their real addresses. So for example, you could put down your place of work instead of your home address. This idea is not unprecedented. In fact, this bill is modeled after the Judge Andrew Wilkinson Judicial Security Act, which protects judicial officers in the state. The General Assembly passed this unanimously in 2024. Additionally, other states have similar protections in place, and Arizona, Florida, and New Jersey all prevent the distribution of public officials' personal information in the same manner as Senate Bill 121. It is essential that Maryland's elected lawmakers are able to perform their duties and legislate effectively on behalf of their constituents without fear of retaliation or harm. Senate Bill 121 established critical safeguards by setting clear privacy protections, enhancing security measures, and providing avenues for relief in the case of violations. This legislation ensures that public servants can fulfill their responsibility to the fullest extent without jeopardizing the safety and well-being of themselves or their families. There is a significant amount of testimony in your folder. And I just wanted to flag that we did have a really productive call this morning with many of those folks who have submitted testimony. And we are committed to working with everyone and taking their feedback and making sure that this bill works in practice. The changes that we discussed this morning include further clarifying the definition of governmental entity, potentially adding more entities to the protected individuals, centralizing all requests from and within the office where the program is housed, rather than having the requests come directly from the individuals, and ensuring all requests that come from that office point to a place where the information should be taken down, rather than putting the onus on the agency to find that information. And I think that in particular will alleviate MML's concerns. We also discussed bifurcating the 72-hour deadline so that it's 72 hours if there is an actual threat against an individual, and providing for more time to remove the data in the case of non-emergencies. We also discussed removing the action for violation against state government entities if they cannot meet the 72 hours, assuming they are acting in good faith. Finally, we're clarifying that this is a separate program than the one that currently exists in the Secretary of State's office, and to ensure that the participants do not have to move to be included. So we are committed to working through this. It will require amendments, but with that, committee members, I request your favorable report on Senate Bill 121. And Mr. Chair, if it's okay with you, I'd like to turn it over to Delegate Kristen Bonner from Minnesota.
Okay. Do you go by, is it Delegate or Representative Bonner? I think.
Representative in Minnesota.
I think so, because I think the only House members or delegates are West Virginia, Maryland.
I'm sorry, I always call her by her first name,
Okay,
Mr.
well,
Chair.
Representative
I'm so
Bonner,
sorry.
welcome, all the way from Minnesota. We appreciate you weighing in on this. We're not going to put you on the clock. I'd like to hear what you have to say on this bill. So why don't you proceed?
It's good to be here with you today. I am State Representative Kristen Bonner, currently serving my 4th term in the Minnesota House of Representatives. But most of you here today know me better as the 2nd House visited by the gunman on January 14th, the legislator that wasn't home. By some miracle, in 99 out of 100 probable choices, the most likely came to pass and it spared my family. But on that tragic day, our lives changed forever. Unfortunately, that meant the loss of my mentor and my friend, Speaker Emerita, Melissa Hortman, her husband, Mark, and their precious golden retriever, Gilbert. It also meant the shooting of my dear friend, Senator John Hoffman, his wife, Yvette, and their daughter, Hope, only narrowly missed being targeted with gunfire as well. I'm here today because I was targeted, stalked, surveilled, and hunted by a gunman whose plan was to kill as many legislators in as short a time as humanly possible. He came armed with a gun and a list, masquerading as a police officer to garner our trust. An assassin came to my door to kill me and my family, and the 2 children in my care at that time. He had no regard for whether or not those children were present in my home. He didn't seem to be fazed by the danger or the humanity of any of it. I live in the shadow of that day, in the shadow of fear and guilt, wondering if I could have done something differently. The story doesn't start on June 14th. It starts much, much earlier. My first threat of violence was before I ever set foot on the House floor or took my first vote. I received a meme of a gentleman staring down the barrel of a long gun with a message below it that said, "I'm coming for you." We've gotten to this place where we have accepted that violence and threats and the increased number of threats we've seen over the years that I've been in the legislature are somehow normal or acceptable or the cost of doing business. They are not. And all because we have the audacity, because I have the audacity to want to serve my community and take care of my neighbors. Over the years, I have been struggling with this idea of making sure that my job and the thing that I love doesn't put my family in harm's way. We should never, ever accept these threats as normal. And we cannot fail to protect public servants working on behalf of their communities because our laws fail to protect those serving our communities and our neighbors. I love my job. I love serving my community. I love serving my neighbors. I love knowing that things that I do, while they may not be remembered, will change the lives of my neighbors bit by bit for the better each and every day. But the price of being a public servant should never, ever be death. And for that reason, I want to stand in firm support of SB 121. And I want to thank you all for your time and attention today. And I'm happy to stand for any questions if you have them.
Okay, why don't we take the testimony of the other 2 panelists, and then we'll open up to questions for any, yourself, the sponsor, or the 3 witnesses. Who would you like to go next? Our virtual witness or Ms.? Okay, Ms. Caldwell, why don't you proceed?
Yes,
And you're going to be on the 2-minute clock. You're here on behalf of the judiciary, but I'm going to have to put you on the clock, okay?
Yes, sir. All right. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and thank you, Senator Hester, for having me. My name is Ebony Caldwell, and I serve as the Assistant State Court Administrator for Human Resources for the Maryland Judiciary. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about how the judiciary implemented the personal information protection programs established under the Judge Andrew F. Wilkinson Judicial Security Act. In the summer of 2024, I was entrusted with the responsibility of implementing the Office of Information Privacy, I'll call it OIP, and launching the programs under by October 1st, 2024. In preparation, I conducted a thorough review of Title III, Subtitle 23, and Subtitle 24 of Courts and Judicial Proceedings article. And we developed two policies, one governing the shielding of personal information for protected individuals defined by law, and the other established the Judicial Address Confidentiality Program, which is modeled after the Maryland Safe at Home Address Confidentiality Program, which adds an additional layer of protection. To implement this personal information shielding process, we created a structured and secure procedure. A protected individual completes a request to remove a personal information from publication form, so that's the first part, and submits it to OIP. The request usually identifies all of the information that should be shielded. Once we receive that information, we contact the appropriate governmental entities or the person to request that the personal information be either not published or be removed from public access. Once we send those requests through encrypted email, and then those requests are notified, we send it to the county offices, the local clerk's offices, the Maryland State Archives, the Maryland Department of Assessments and Taxation, and within 72 hours, the governmental entities or the person should have that information removed. Once we know that that information has been removed, we then send the protected individual a formal notification of removal. I see I have 5 seconds. So this program definitely has some complexities. We've had a lot of issues with primary and secondary residencies, jointly owned properties, making sure that not just the protected individuals in Maryland are covered, but also the federal judges as well. Could I finish, or you want?
You could just finish up. Go on.
Okay. We would not have been able to be successful in the implementation of these programs without strong collaboration with the governmental entities. We have two positions that we reclassified to support the daily operations of OIP. We developed internal processes and forms that I mentioned earlier. The circuit court clerks have been instrumental in this process. SSTAT, as I said earlier, Maryland State Archives, Department of Planning, the GIS Working Group, also State Board of Elections as well. We additionally have benefited from the best practices under the Office of the Secretary of State. Just one last bit, one of our most critical things that we've learned with developing this process is the need for verification and auditing. Once governmental entities, when they update systems, we learn that information may reappear online. So we have also had another position that we had to reclassify and give additional responsibilities to as well, to make sure that once that information reappears, that we work with that protected individual to have it taken down again. So today we have about 200 protected individuals in our program, not just Maryland State, but also federal judges as well. We continue to do outreach, and we continue to do education to ensure that everyone is protected. So thank you for having me here today, and I'm here to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Ms. Caldwell. Let's take Ms. Rogers next, and then we'll take questions. Okay, Ms. Rogers, you're going to be also on the 2-minute clock, okay? You can proceed.
All right, I'm Katasha Rogers, and I'm here representing Delete Me today. Before I start, I'm sure we all saw the Super Bowl ad for Meta smart glasses. I haven't purchased a pair myself. However, with these, I could photograph people in this room, run those images through facial recognition tools, and within minutes have your home addresses, phone numbers, and connections. I could identify associates. I could map networks. The technology exists now, and the personal information is easily accessible on the open web. This isn't about privacy in the abstract. This is operational security. Senate Bill 121 addresses doxing, AI-assisted targeting, and other exploits. Maryland Judge Andrew Wilkinson was tragically killed in his own driveway in 2023. Easy access to personal information has led to assault, harassment, trespassing, and property damage. Delete Me has been searching, monitoring, and removing personal information from data brokers for 15 years. Our data on what we do, we call them custom removals, shows a 70% success rate without legal backing. We predict more than 90% with SB 121's 72-hour mandate and penalties. We're not new to this work. We protect over 20 judicial branches nationwide, including Maryland's judges, and more than 2,000 federal judges. Utah uses us to protect elected officials under HB 538, and we work with major agencies across Minnesota, New York, Illinois, Florida, and beyond. Here's what matters. People can be protected now. The question isn't whether we can afford to protect public servants, it's whether we can afford not to. Transparency matters in public life. It should remain the standard, but at home, it shouldn't afford a clear line of sight through your kitchen window. SB 121 makes existing solutions enforceable. It's important. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. We'll take questions, starting with Vice Chair Kagan.
Chair. First off, Representative Bonner, sincere condolences about the murder of Speaker Emerita Melissa Hartman. It was such an enormous loss, and I think so many of us, and maybe especially women, just really grieved with you. Sandy Pappas is a good friend of mine and your colleague, my friend. Senator Hester, thank you for this bill. I have a few questions. After the murders, after the attacks, I actually had a lot of conversations about this. I have been threatened, as I'm sure that many of us have. One of the first people I talked to was our state administrator of our Board of Elections. And all of our addresses are public. Even if Delete Me could delete all the other places, we have to prove that we live in our districts. And so I talked through with Mr. Demarinis, well, what if there was some discrete, offline, verify, yep, she lives in District 17. This is her real address, and she has a utility bill or something to prove that, and therefore, yes, she can be on the ballot in District 17. It's more work. It can still be, the information is still so accessible. So I think someone said, Ms. Caldwell, maybe you said, we could use our office addresses. As an incumbent, I could use, hypothetically, a Senate address. That doesn't work for a campaign, outreach, solicitation, or outreach, or mailer. It also isn't fair to a challenger who has no such, who may have no such office opportunity. I don't know about the specialness of members of the General Assembly. I mean, should we be, how broadly do we expand this? And then what's the ultimate cost? And that's kind of the slippery slope that I started going down after the Minnesota murders. And so I wonder, I know you've given this thought. I wonder if you could address that, address all of those questions. And then the last thing is you have an effective date proposed for October 1st. So we can talk about that as well if this bill were to move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do you want to address the first one about the elections?
About using an alternate address?
Yes.
So you can, yes, I would say, you can use an alternate address. I know some of our judges use an alternate address as well. Another thing that I would think about is even a P.O. box, even if it's for a challenger, but that might not be the question.
Well, yes, P.O. boxes. P.O. boxes are options. They cost money. And that may be determinative as to whether someone can stay safe if they can afford a P.O. box and not safe if they can't and have to use a real home address. All of these are sticky questions, I think. Senator Hester, have you any thoughts about the State Board of Elections and how we could be transparent but yet safe and private at the same time?
Senator Kagan, I would generally defer to you and Jared Demarinis on State Board of Elections stuff, but I will say that the fiscal summary for this bill, is here, and this one is inclusive of many people who asked to be included. I believe there is another bill coming that is only state elected officials. So the fiscal note here is, in the first year, is $782,000 to protect all of the people in the bill. It then goes down because that's for the initial work, and then it's approximately $200,000 annually after that. So that is kind of an upper end. But we have also the functioning system in the judiciary, and I believe that their operating expenses are less and could give a better ballpark.
Yes, so for the Office of Information Privacy, we did not have any fiscal impact to develop that office.
The Secretary of State has the address confidentiality program for women, people who have survived domestic violence. I know that they're involved here, and I see that they've got testimony in here. The struggle, Senator, is how do we maintain our accessibility and transparency as well as our safety, on the other hand?
I mean, that may be a policy discussion.
Yes.
I think in this day and age, I feel strongly that my security, the security of my parent, my children, my family, and that the security of, everybody sitting around this room and theirs, I mean, I believe that it should be shielded. And if you feel differently, then that's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that is a policy call. We're going to go Senator Watson, then Senator Washington.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this bill. It's excellent. And, I mean, the General Assembly pays for offices in the district and everything. So the cost of a P.O. box is nothing. But many of you know that over the course of the summer, my house, my wife, we were stalked. It was in the paper, and these folks came to my home. And I'm keenly interested in your bill and Senator Brooks' bill that we're going to hear, I believe, that talks about home security system expenses. Because I think every elected official needs to have a Ring camera or something like that installed and paid for to protect us. And security is #1 priority. Transparency, yeah, okay. But if somebody's life could be put in danger, and we've seen this around the country, that should be at the forefront of any discussion we have to protect those folks who are out here trying to do this tough work. And so I hope that both of you guys' bills pass, but if only one, I hope we can come together and look at the PII piece and look at the surveillance piece, because I think both of them are vitally, vitally important. So I thank both of you for that.
Thank you, Senator Watson.
Okay, that was, I think, more comment than question. We're going to go to Senator Washington.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Representative, I was asked to speak at an ethical society gathering the morning after the murder of your colleagues. And, it was at that moment I really, and in thinking about it, because there's so much that we just say, oh, it's just part of the business, you can't go to the grocery store in your sweats without you, because someone's going to ask you questions that we're public, and that's what you choose. And in thinking about it, I realized that, I made my choice, but my family didn't make that choice as well. And so, again, we are all certainly here with you and grateful for you to come and talk with us today so we can be reminded about our humanness and of our families and our needs. I do have questions. One would be the notions of the continuity of government. So to the extent to which our safety or the safety of the judiciary, the safety of the legislature, I mean, under COVID, under notions of continuity of government, we took certain protections, requiring masks, requiring us to get shots and things like that. So I guess you're in the judiciary. Is there a similar notion of the continuity of government or of the responsibility of the judiciary, and then also the notion of it being in the public interest?
As far as the transparency or the shielding?
The protection, let's talk about the protection. That's what I'm.
So I think, if I'm understanding the question, the protection is, can you help me understand the question just a little bit more?
I guess it's sort of I wanted to see if in your decision or in the judiciary's decision, was it raised that it's in the interest of having to have a judiciary, that judiciary be safe?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And you have guards, and we have those certain things. And that it's not simply the interest of the individuals, but of the institution of the judiciary.
Absolutely. And I believe that our judges are front-facing every day, and they're with the public every day, and it is in the best interest to have them be safeguarded. I don't know if, like you said, about it being not just you who made the decision, the judges didn't, their families didn't make those decisions either. So I think it is in the best interest to make sure that we're keeping them safe and their families as much as possible.
And the notion of the public interest, I guess I should asking the senator if you would comment also, not as individuals, this isn't about having a meal or something or paid for, et cetera, but is there an argument about the continuity of government, about the content that it's in the public interest, or can this solely be constructed as, sort of self-serving?
There's a lot there, Senator.
I
mean,
know.
I certainly feel that, whoever said it earlier, like, we are public servants until we go home, right? And then I'm just a mom and a wife, and love my family. And so I would say that it's certainly not self-serving. For me to want their safety. And there were 44 representative senators on the hit list or something like that in Minnesota.
And
if they
they've been
all got
successful-
shot, if they were all murdered, the government, they would have had to take the next steps, but that's absolutely in the public's interest not to have your entire legislature shot.
Yeah.
And I don't know if
Yeah.
Representative Bonner has anything more to say about that, living it herself.
Thank you, Senator Hester. I think we've had to make some significant changes in Minnesota as a reaction to this incident. I can tell you that almost every one of my colleagues on my side of the aisle was in fact on that list, along with other members of the community, some folks in other states. We still don't know the full extent of his intent. But what I can tell you is that over time, I think it's absolutely necessary to have additional data privacy measures in place, additional security measures in place. In Minnesota, we do now pay for some monitoring and security upgrades at our homes. As a tech professional, I will say publicly, I have some concerns about Ring and their use of biometric data and sharing of data, just as a technologist. So, but that said, I think that we are living in really perilous times, right? When we wrote most of our data privacy laws, we never envisioned a world in which a bad actor would use data broker sites for pennies on the dollar to extract our information, to target us and to hunt us. That's something I don't think anyone ever conceived as possible or plausible. But it is becoming increasingly more so. In Minnesota, we are looking to expand the protections we afforded to judges, much like SB 121, to our legislative branch, our elected executive branch, and we are looking at the options to expand and scale the capabilities to also include law enforcement, prosecutors, and those in the corrections fields who may also have significant sensitivity to these issues. And the point was made earlier by yourself, I'm willing to put myself out in the public eye. I'm willing to stand on the House floor, even if there are people with guns in the gallery above my head. Because it is what is asked of me to protect my community, to push that button, to take care of them. But I can tell you that my family didn't sign up for that role. And knowing what could have happened to my significant other, to the children in my care at that time. And even if the gunman had had the decency to not shoot those children, sorry,
Thank you, yeah.
it hurts my heart to think about what would have happened had those children come out of their bedrooms to find me bleeding on the floor, and what that would do to children long term. There is no place for this kind of violence. There is no place for any of this. And unfortunately, our laws are just in a place where they were not created to envision this type of threat. And so I do think that bills like SB 121 are absolutely 100% necessary.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, I think we have additional witness on this bill, so I think we need to move forward. Thank you all for your testimony. Very much
Thank you
appreciated.
very much.
Thank you.
I've got Tommy Hausschauer. Is Mr. Hausschauer here? Yes, sir. Okay, why don't you come on up? Yeah, I'm just going to call the remaining witnesses. We've got Justin Fiore from Maryland Municipal League. Justin, just why don't you come up? I've got Judy Rupp also from the judiciary. I don't know if that's overlap. Is Ms. Rupp here? Okay, is it overlap from, okay, we already had the, and Michael Laurie from the Secretary of State, Susan Lee's office. Michael, why don't you come on up? And that'll be the extent of the witnesses. Okay, let's first of all start with you, Mr. Hausschauer. You signed up favorable. Mr. Fiore is favorable with an amendment, and Mr. Laurie is here just for information purposes only. Okay, so we'll start with our favorable witness, Mr. Hausschauer, and you're going to each be, you'll be on the 2-minute clock. Okay,
Yes, sir.
apologize there.
Yes, I'm very passionate about data privacy for public servants and government employees, and I support HB 121. My name is Tommy Hausschauer. I am the head of the public sector for Vanish ID. We are also a privacy company. Vanish ID has built a privacy technology that's government grade, and we're founded on transparency and accuracy in reporting. I've spent a decade of my life in the technology industry working for some established companies you may know, SAP, Salesforce, Adobe, and I was even the head of public sector for Delete Me, and now I'm the head of public sector for Vanish ID. In the last 3 years, I've spent my career educating and promoting data privacy and the risks that data broker industry, which is $350 billion industry, puts public sector employees and public sector elected officials at risk by selling this information. In 2024, I was instrumental in passing HB 538 in my home state, Utah. It mandates personal identifiable information be redacted from the open web for all elected officials and any state employee that has been harassed or threatened. In 2025, the National Conference of State Legislators, NCSL, invited me to speak on at their AI cybersecurity task force around data privacy and the importance of removing PII for the legislature and legislatures and elected officials. I've been a part of the National Address Confidentiality Program for multiple years and presented at their conferences as well. Committee members, it's near impossible to remove PII information without a third party such as a Vanish ID. The amount of data that's bought and sold is constant. It's a $350 billion data broker industry. Unless we give up all of our cell phones today, there's no way that one organization could remove all of this personal information off the open web.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ms. Fiore, you're here with the proposed amendment, favorable with amendment, and you're going to be on the 2-minute clock.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. Justin Fiore here on behalf of the Maryland Municipal League in support of Senate Bill 121 with amendments. I want to thank the sponsor for bringing this very important bill and for including local officials and protecting them within it. Our amendments, as you heard from the sponsor, are kind of around making sure that this is possible in practice. To that end, we've had some really good conversations already. It's a mix of technical and a few more substantive amendments. We've made some headway. I think we can continue to do it. I'm confident we will. And when that happens, I urge you to take a favorable report.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Michael, welcome. On behalf of the Secretary of State, and you're here for information purposes. Why don't you proceed?
Thank you. Yeah, Deputy Secretary of State Michael Laurie for the record. Here to provide information as the agency that would have to implement this program with the other agencies providing this information to us. I agree we would need a third party to assist, and I don't think that's, first of all, reflected in the fiscal note. And we need to talk costs because they're covering 200 people as of now. But I believe they hire people to perform those functions. So I just want to make sure the costs that are associated with the implementation of this are accounted for. As we go forward, there are a lot of things we should do, and there's another bill you're sponsoring with Senator West that is worth reviewing, and as other states, it might make sense to do an incremental approach. But we're happy to work with the sponsor, and we had a good conversation this morning for 30 minutes, but I think there's a lot of further discussion to have here. It's very different from the current program that we run, because our program is really a mail forwarding service, and we work with other agencies to make sure that the ID reflects the address of our building. To do this for some 20,000 plus people would, needless to say, be challenging, but we're willing to work with the sponsor and figure out a way that would make sense to move forward. There are some other agencies and entities that might also be well suited to do this. I won't list them off. They'll be angry at me, but I do think it certainly makes sense to have a one-stop shop when it comes to who you're reporting to. Having too many steps in the process is going to be a problem. So maybe it makes sense to start with the legislature and to move out from that. But we're open to working with the sponsor and the members of the committee to protect your safety and that of the public. You should know our current participants have to move to be eligible. So we expanded the program a few years ago. Anyone who's threatened, so if you're threatened, you're eligible for our program. But to actually be in the program, you need to move. And I'm pretty sure that was the impetus for the judges program to begin with, because they didn't necessarily want to move. I think that's an important thing to consider. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Hester, for the legislation. And before I ask my question of Mr. Fiore with the MML, I wanted to mention I have the Delmar Mayor, Ben Jordan, is here, happened to be up for Taste of Eastern Shore, but then the timing of being able to listen to this bill hearing, and he was also with Dorchester County Council member Mike Detmer, who also works for Congressman Andy Harris. So I had the opportunity. I said, you know, you're here and we're going to hear this bill. And it was interesting to me that Council member Detmer from Dorchester County said his 16-year-old daughter actually asked him about the safety. You know, do people know where we lived at? So, you know, it's real with the families. At the same time, I'm also sitting here thinking about, you know, what is workable. And so I appreciate, Mr. Fiore, your testimony. You know, I'm thinking like, you know, if one of us were threatened, I know the first thing I would do is go to law enforcement and make sure, because I know if I told my local law enforcement, they would be all over it. And, you know, again, I think your point being whether there's the threat or kind of these overall protections and what is workable. So could you expand a little bit, Mr. Fiore, on when you say amendments and how to make it workable? What do you mean by that?
Sure, and thank you, Senator. Some of it's technical and small, like there are provisions in the bill regarding the election article and how elections work. Municipalities aren't in the election article, so we might need another technical change to make sure we can still ensure that the person running for office is in fact a part of that municipality or that district. So there are some small ones like that, but we've also talked, and you heard the sponsor mention, considerations for how we deal with immediate threats versus larger batch threats. The pool of people in this particular bill can be quite large, considering it's all current police officers, former police officers, local officials, state elected officials, administration officials. What we're looking at is when you have 72 hours to pull all of this potential information down, and the potential penalty for not being able to do so could be fines or other monetary injunctive penalties. we're concerned up front, especially in the early years when you get a program of this size up and running, if the requests are coming on behalf of the agency, for example, we might see a lot of requests early on. And the ability for a small town clerk or a custodian to be able to find all that information and take it down in under 72 hours, at least up front, could be really challenging. So we just want to find a way to make sure that, you know, we're dealing with immediate threats, but that also we have the resources and we know exactly what documents we need to take down or redact, where they are, et cetera. So like, I think we just need to make it work, but there's a path forward here.
So I'm kind of hearing a prioritization on those under immediate threat.
That's a lot of what we talked about this morning and what makes probably the most sense to do moving forward.
Thank you for your testimony.
Okay, additional questions? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 121. We're going to stick with Senator Hester, Senate Bill 183. And I'm going to call up your sponsor panelists, and then we actually two of which are virtual. Nicholas Combs, I see Nick back there, I do know Nick. Christian Diacechi, and then we've got two witnesses virtual on the sponsor panel, Craig Baker. What about Sarah? Okay, we'll take, so we have one. Okay, Senator Hester, we're on Senate Bill 183, and you can proceed, take the time you need, and then we'll take your two in-person witnesses, then we'll take your one virtual sponsor panel, and then we'll see where we are. Okay, Senator Hester, Senate Bill 183.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Senator Katie Fry Hester, here to ask for your consideration of Senate Bill 183. This bill establishes the Maryland Cyber Reserve within the military department to ensure that the state has a ready body of cybersecurity experts to provide rapid response in the event of a cyber attack. As you probably know, cybersecurity attacks are becoming more frequent and more sophisticated, particularly with the use of artificial intelligence, and have already disrupted essential services and imposed significant costs on the state. In just 1 year nationally, from 2024 to 2025, ransomware incidents in the U.S. rose by 146%, and the U.S. accounted for about 50% of the ransomware attacks worldwide. Further, U.S. cybercrime costs have grown from about $20 billion in 2023 to $640 billion in 2025, which is a huge increase. In addition, Maryland's critical infrastructure increasingly relies on digital systems, and cybersecurity threats pose a direct risk to public safety, service delivery, and of course, fiscal stability. And as they become more frequent, they've already disrupted essential services in the state. And I just have a few examples that you probably will remember. Frederick Health Medical Group in April 2024, a ransomware attack compromised sensitive personal and medical information of more than 934,000 patients. The Department of Health attack back in 2022 during the COVID-19 pandemic, when data reporting went down and it prevented residents from applying for Medicaid and limited access to essential healthcare services. More recently, in February 2025, the Anne Arundel County government experienced an intrusion into county systems that allowed unauthorized access to sensitive data, including confidential Department of Health information. And in 2023, Baltimore County Public Schools, a cyber attack there resulted in nearly $10 million in recovery and remediation costs at the state. Unfortunately, at the same time as these threats are going up, federal support for state and local cybersecurity has declined. So we have seen a decline in the state and local cybersecurity grant program, and it's currently still pending reauthorization in Congress. Organizations like CISA have shifted away from long-standing cooperative agreements with organizations like the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, which historically has provided free or low-cost threat intelligence. And so these trends of declining grant allocations, reduced direct operational support coincide with the rising cyber threats to state systems. And Maryland has made a lot of progress in this area. This committee passed the Cybersecurity Governance Act of 2022, and we added staffing to the Maryland Office of Security Management, which has grown from 4 full-time employees to 34 at this point in time. We also have dedicated cybersecurity expertise now at our Public Service Commission to work with our utilities, and an operational technology expert at the Department of Technologies to work with our water systems. However, in this fiscal climate, the state cannot afford to continue to hire and retain enough full-time personnel to meet the scale and speed of today's threats. And so Senate Bill 183 offers a cost-effective solution by tapping into one of Maryland's greatest assets, the thousands of highly trained cybersecurity professionals in our private sector who are eager to serve and volunteer their expertise when the state needs it most. Senate Bill 183 addresses the threat of cyber attacks using a framework that has proven successful in Michigan, Ohio, and Texas. The establishment of a cyber reserve would assist the state by ensuring a ready group of cybersecurity experts is accessible in the event of a cyber emergency and mobilizing the expertise already within Maryland to more effectively protect state interests. So specifically, what this bill does is it establishes the Maryland Cyber Reserve within the military department as a new component of the state's organized militia composed of both commissioned officers and volunteer force of a volunteer force of qualified professionals. It places the Cyber Reserve under the authority of the governor as commander-in-chief, under the operational control of our adjutant general. It authorizes the Cyber Reserve to provide educational and technical support to respond to cyber attacks targeting state, counties, local agencies, critical infrastructure within Maryland. And it permits deployment to assist Maryland corporations and citizens affected by cyber attacks when directed by competent authority. This legislation was developed using models established by several other states invested in improving cybersecurity. And today we're going to hear from Ohio, which does this well. In a world where waterways are managed through a computer system and the value of cyber-ready expertise cannot be understated, and by establishing a cyber reserve, our state can assure that cyber attacks can be responded to effectively and efficiently, protecting Maryland's security and residents' safety in a cost-effective manner. For these reasons, I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 183.
Okay, thank you, Senator Hester. Let's go through your sponsor panel, then we'll take questions. Nick, welcome to the committee, and everybody's going to have to be on the 2-minute clock, though, okay? So why don't you proceed?
Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Nicholas Combs. I'm Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Ficina Global Service, a Maryland-based company supporting the Department of Defense, the intelligence community, and law enforcement organizations. I began my career as a cryptologic technician at the National Security Agency and have served across the Army, the intelligence community, and the private sector for more than 4 decades. One lesson has remained constant. Technology matters, but people matter more. In a real cyber incident, success depends upon whether trusted professionals are ready to respond immediately. Artificial intelligence has permanently changed the threat landscape. Human behavior remains the weakest link in cybersecurity, and AI now weaponizes that weakness, allowing individual bad actors to do what only nation states could do a short time ago. For Maryland, this presents unique risk. Our state sits at the center of America's cyber ecosystem. We are home to federal agencies, defense contractors, research universities, healthcare systems, ports, and critical infrastructure. That concentration of talent and data makes us both powerful and vulnerable. When systems fail, consequences are immediate. If schools go down, learning stops. If energy systems fail, public safety is at risk. If water systems are compromised, lives are affected. These are not IT problems. They are public safety and economic resilience issues. No single agency or utility can maintain all the expertise needed to fight today's threats alone. What matters in crisis is speed, coordination, and access to trusted professionals. Preparedness, not perfection, determines outcomes. Cybersecurity is a team sport. Senate Bill 183 recognizes that cyber incidents are inevitable, but being prepared or not. Thank you, Senator Hester, for your leadership in this important legislation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Combs. Why don't we go to you, sir? Tell us who you are, and then you'll have up to 2 minutes, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Christian Jashishi. I'm the CTO and founder of Global Access Development Group. We specialize in cybersecurity in federal space, mostly in Department of...
Could you put that mic a little closer?
Yeah, sorry.
Yep, there you go. Thank you.
We specialize mostly in cybersecurity and IT security measure in Department of Health and Human Services. For the last 20 years, I worked just within the federal government and different agencies and big IT companies. Mr. Kopp just explained and started to explain to you the criticality of having staff available to do the work. But the big change here in cybersecurity is that if we do not have we have to be able to match the frame laws to the people on the field to do the work. So what I see through this bill is a change in how Maryland build the force needed and align with NIST frameworks to be able to boot on the ground, not just looking at cybersecurity framework, but boot on the ground to help county schools and our critical infrastructure. The big problem here is it's a big divide. As we know, we have a lot of agencies, and like here in Annapolis, or school or county that has enough money, but some agencies do not have, or school, county do not have enough money to bring 24/7 and support support staff in there. So we need this build. You need the capacity to build the reserve that is needed, the discipline that is needed to be able to face stuff that are coming our way. AI and all quantum computing and all of these being bigger challenges that we need to build the stuff. So that's why I'm here to support Bill 183. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Let's go to the two virtual witnesses, and then we'll take questions. Mr. Baker, why don't you go first? You've got to unmute yourself. Mr. Baker, unmute yourself. Okay, now we're good.
Sorry, have not used Zoom in quite some time. So Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee, thank you very much for having me today. My name is Craig Baker, and I'm the Program Administrator for the Ohio Cyber Reserve. I'm also a retired colonel from the Army with 25 years, so I've worked around this a little bit, but the Ohio Cyber Reserve was created in 2019 when Governor DeWine signed off on the Senate bill. And at that time, Major General John Harris, who was the TAG or Adjutant General at the time, made 3 promises, which became our missions with the governor. One, that we would assist state and local government entities to help them assess and strengthen their networks. We would also work with critical infrastructure, which we do with water right now, and water, both wastewater and treated water, as well as the pump systems that they use. And we also do working with House Bill 96, which is a new bill forcing all government entities to have some form of a network security system involved in their facilities. We also, the second promise was that we would educate their workforce. So we broke that into the current and future workforce. In the future workforce, we work with K through 12 as well as colleges. We've helped develop college thesis for seniors at Ohio State. We've also done a lot of competitions for K through 12, speaking engagements, career days, where we help to plant the seed of cybersecurity within the future workforce. And in the current workforce, we do a lot of cybersecurity framework seminars. We've covered probably 400 out of the 700 school districts, approximately 700 school districts in Ohio, with 5 3-hour seminars covering a different amount of information on tools to help them prepare. And the third promise was to conduct incident response, where we've saved approximately $10 million in ransomware between multiple large cities in Ohio. And we've also conducted another $10 million in savings for doing assist missions, education, and other things that we do as part of the Ohio Cyber Reserve, all for free to the state and local government entities in the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Pawazak, all the way from UC Berkeley, welcome. And you've got up to 2 minutes, all the way from Berkeley, California.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Sarah Pawazak, and I'm speaking in an informational capacity from the UC Berkeley Center for Long-Term Cybersecurity, the largest convener and researcher on cyber volunteering organizations in the country. The bottom line is that community organizations often cannot afford to protect themselves against cyber attacks, which disrupt critical human services for residents. We have seen the power of expert volunteers like Cyber Reserve Corps to fill critical gaps in cybersecurity services nationwide. Cyber Reserve teams follow well-trodden paths that have been in place for many years in Michigan, Wisconsin, Texas, Ohio, Virginia, and Louisiana, and new programs are developing in Oklahoma, Washington, and New Jersey. These programs provide services like education and training, vulnerability and risk assessments, and on-call expertise, incident response, and recovery efforts. Cyber Reserve teams help ensure organizations like cities, schools, utilities, and nonprofits get the assistance they need and could not otherwise afford. In Wisconsin, for every $1 spent on the Cyber Reserve team, they were able to save victims $1.40 in costs like response and recovery. Maryland already has a strong and growing collection of regional cyber defense models, with a cybersecurity clinic at UMBC and 2 more clinics on the way through the Department of Labor Pilot Clinic Grant Initiative. Maryland Defense Force volunteers serve state entities like the Army National Guard, the Air National Guard, and Emergency Management. A Cyber Reserve Corps focusing beyond the state government to community entities like local governments and critical infrastructure could be a natural extension of this burgeoning ecosystem and whole-of-state cybersecurity strategy. I also want to highlight the role of civil society in providing essential human services like housing assistance, food access, childcare, and disaster relief. Civil society would also be deserving beneficiaries of cyber volunteering programs. CLTC is linked to more resources in our submitted written testimony. Thank you again for this opportunity to share more with the committee.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Senator Hester, the sponsor, or her panelists? We're going to start with Senator Carrozza, Senator Watson, Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. Senator Hester, thank you for the bill. And I was impressed that you had the Ohio National Guard, and Governor DeWine was mentioned since I worked for him in the past when he was a member of Congress. So I respect the work that the Ohio National Guard has done in this area. My question, Senator Hester, is if there's been some coordination with General Burkhead and there's, I think, some kind of issues that have been raised on how this would be workable, so wanted to give you the opportunity to respond to that.
I've had a number of conversations with General Burkhead and other members of the National Guard. I believe that they are, in fact, we were talking about, whether or not these people need uniforms, right? Because if you're going into a school system, it might be better to show up in civilian clothes rather than a uniform. But anyways, I think that they have not provided a letter of information just because of the fiscal note. That is my understanding.
I understand. Thank you.
Senator Watson?
Yes. Quick question for Mr. Baker. How does the program work? How much does it cost? The program?
Mr. Baker, could you answer the question? I don't know if you could hear.
Mr. Baker?
You frozen?
He's frozen. Okay, we'll get back to him.
Baker? Nope, I think he dropped. Okay, all right.
I can ask him to follow up with the committee. The question was how exactly the program works and how much it costs? Yes. I'll follow up.
I can share that the annual budget of the Wisconsin Cyber Reserve Team is about $900,000.
Senator Carrozza started down the same rabbit hole I was going to go. If I could just expand her question, and you can circle back another time. So in addition to Adjutant General Burkhead, I'm curious about MDEM, the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, and the Department of Information Technology. Sort of, if you can, and I saw that it was going to be housed in the military department, but I assume that DOIT and MDEM would need to be connected in some way. If you want to speak to that now, or we can talk offline.
I think probably offline. I'd want to check with those agencies first.
I see a question from Senator Brooks.
Thank you. Thanks for the bill, Senator. Yeah. Quickly, how would this differ from the, I guess, what you'd say, the Maryland Defense Force or the National Guard Cyber Unit? And also, would it perhaps offer additional aid coverage for the Adjutant General?
So in the Maryland Defense Force, there is a cyber task force, and this is a much smaller unit that is housed within the Defense Force. And I actually know somebody there, and I called and spoke to them this morning as well. And it's their opinion that they really need a strong standalone unit that is solely focused on cybersecurity that works in that way. They need more resources, more manpower than they can currently handle. So it's an additional opportunity for people to volunteer in the Guard to do specifically cybersecurity, and that is it.
And secondly, is this something that General Burkhead would endorse or support?
I would encourage you to ask her that question.
Okay.
I feel like there's some, I mean, in principle, there's broad support for the idea, but the conversations are still going on.
I see. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Any additional questions? Vice Chair? No? Okay. Okay, thank you to the sponsor panel, Senator Hester. We only have one other witness signed up, Charlotte Fleckenstein from MACO. Charlotte, why don't you come up? Okay, you guys are released. Thank you for your testimony. And Charlotte, MACO is signed up favorable with amendments, so you can tell us what kind of amendments you think should be on this piece of legislation.
All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Charlotte Fleckenstein, Legislative Services Assistant with MACO, testifying today in support of Senate Bill 183 with amendments. First and foremost, we very much appreciate the intent of this bill. Local governments are increasingly the targets of such cyber threats and attacks that, as the Senator mentioned, are becoming increasingly more sophisticated. So certainly better preparing them for and protecting them from these cyber incidents is an incredibly important and shared mission. MACO just has a few simple clarifying belt and suspenders amendments here, focusing on how the Cyber Reserve would most effectively interact with local governments, just looking to clarify the role of county consent and authorization, as well as establish some data protections for local governments. We've addressed those with the sponsor, and we're happy to continue working with her and the committee on this one. Again, we really appreciate the support that this bill would offer and think that it would be a really useful tool in practice. So as such, MACO is respectfully urging a favorable with amendments report on Senate Bill 183.
Okay, questions? Senator Hester, anybody? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 183. We'll next move to Senator Gallion on Senate Bill 256, Senator. And I've got Grace Fielder signed up as part of your sponsor panel. Is Ms. Fielder here? And then one virtual witness, Patrick Wilton, and Patrick is virtual. Okay, so those are the two witnesses on this piece of legislation. So Senator, Senate Bill 256, you can begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, fellow committee members. For the record, Senator Jason Gallion here, representing District 35, Hartford and Cecil counties, to introduce Senate Bill 256, Board of Landscape Architects revisions. You know, we've heard in this committee before, it's been said that some of the best bill ideas come from fellow Marylanders that we meet along the way. And during the interim, I had the opportunity to meet Ms. Grace Fielder actually at a fundraiser for Hartford Land Trust, and struck up conversation, and it led to this. I'm going to give a brief overview of the bill, and then Ms. Fielder can provide her testimony and help answer any technical questions that the committee may have. Senate Bill 256 makes targeted but meaningful reforms to how Maryland licenses and regulates landscape architects. Specifically, the bill updates the official name of the licensing board to the State Board of Professional Landscape Architects to better reflect the modern scope of the profession. It revises the definition of licensed landscape architects to professional landscape architects for clarity and consistency. It adjusts qualifications for board membership to ensure a broader and more effective representation of the landscape architecture profession. It also clarifies and updates certain duties of the board to support better governance and aligns educational and experience requirements for licensure with current professional standards in the field. These changes improve the regulatory framework in a way that balances public protection with professional development. Landscape architects play a vital role in environmental stewardship, sustainable land use, stormwater management, and public space design across Maryland. SB 256 does not expand regulatory authority unnecessarily, nor does it introduce burdensome requirements on practitioners. Rather, it modernizes existing statutes and ensures that Maryland's licensing framework supports quality, safety, and public confidence in the profession. Licensure and its oversight matter. They help protect the public by ensuring that only qualified individuals practice in areas that affect land use, community spaces, and environmental outcomes. The bill advances those goals while supporting Maryland's landscape architecture community. For those reasons, I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 256. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Fielder, why don't we go to
Thank you,
next?
Senator Gallion. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Grace Fielder. I'm here representing myself as an individual and as a president of Grace E. Fielder & Associates Chartered, a landscape architecture and environmental firm I founded in 1991. I also need to inform you that I serve on the Board of Examiners of Landscape Architects. However, I am not speaking for them or representing them today. I became a licensed landscape architect in 1978 under the original statute, which took effect on July 1st in 1971. The legislation that is before you today will modernize that original statute to better align Maryland's landscape architects with our fellow disciplines of civil engineering, land surveying, and architects. First and foremost, modernization continues to provide for and protect the public's health, safety, and welfare. In particular, the updated statute does change the name of the State Board of Examiners of Landscape Architects to State Board of Landscape Architects. Licensed landscape architects become professional landscape architects. The provision of the emeritus status will allow those people that are retiring or have retired to retain landscape architecture emeritus as their status. Health, safety, and welfare of the public remain the bedstone of the proposed changes for the statute. SB 256 ensures that only qualified individuals practice in areas that affect land use, community spaces, and environmental outcomes. I need to state that I was only the 15th woman to be registered in the state of Maryland when I became registered in 1978. It is a profession that has vastly changed. The statute as it exists today does not incorporate where we are today as a profession. For these reasons, I respectfully request a favorable report on SB 256.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Well, let's go to Mr. Wheelton, and then we'll take questions. Sir, you're signed up favorable, and you can proceed.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Patrick Wheelton. I serve as president of the Maryland chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects, and I'm here today representing our chapter's approximately 400 members in support of Senate Bill 256. This legislation is straightforward and measured. It modernizes terminology in the existing Maryland statute governing the profession of landscape architecture to reflect how the profession is practiced today and aligns landscape architecture with other licensed design disciplines in the state. Importantly, the bill does not change the current requirements for education, experience, or examination standards related to professional licensure. Those requirements already meet nationally recognized licensure benchmarks that are supported by the American Society of Landscape Architects. This bill helps to clarify professional designation and strengthens public understanding of who is qualified to practice landscape architecture. This bill also establishes the emeritus status to provide a respectful and structured pathway for senior professionals to step back from active practice while maintaining a clear distinction from current licensure and professional responsibility. This mirrors existing frameworks for other professions in Maryland and ensures transparency for the public. This bill represents a modest but important update to improve clarity, consistency, and professional alignment without expanding the scope or altering standards of the profession. Our chapter respectfully asks for your favorable report on Senate Bill 256, and we thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Questions for Senator Gallion or the panel? Senator Washington.
Thank you, and thank you so much. Thank you for this bill, and thank you for your service on the board. I don't know anything about landscape licensure, so what's the process now? You apply, because I'm seeing changing from the word profession to license. So will there no longer be a license required?
Yes, there will be a license. There are a number of different paths to licensure. The difference is we are now going to be called professional landscape architects, which aligns with engineers and architects. The one thing that's really, I think, unique about Maryland is that Maryland does have a path to landscape architecture license, professional landscape architect, by allowing someone to come along who does not have a college degree but practices in the field with someone, so that eventually they don't have the college education, but they have a right to pass through As long as they qualify to sit for the exam and pass the exam, they will become a professional landscape architect and one that will be welcomed in the profession.
And you don't know this about me, but I love alternative pathways, multiple ways of assessing and demonstrating competency. So you don't have to worry on that respect. I just see, Senator, that there's a license, there's a charge for a license, and there's an authorized individual. So I'm wondering what the difference is between licensed design professional and professional landscape architect. And it might be the way it was drafted, so maybe we could follow up. But
Licensed landscape architect is this bill provides for change, so it becomes professional landscape architect. It does not change the underlying requirements for experience or any of those things. It is simply a name change. An important name change.
And just one more. So the Middle States Association of Colleges and Schools, there is a change to the Council for Higher Education Accreditation. That's a change.
Love to address that. In this case, my age is very much an asset. When I went to college in 1968, by the time in 1970 I realized what I wanted to be was a landscape architect. There were only 7 colleges in the United States that even offered landscape architecture. Maryland not being one of them. I had siblings in college. I had gotten into Maryland. I thought Maryland was going to have the program. They did not. So at that point in time, I ended up on the alternative and had to have a lot more years of experience. So I was thrilled because my passion was landscape architecture. It has remained landscape architecture. So when I received my license in 1978, I was absolutely thrilled, and I'm passionate about it. I think it's a great profession, and I hope that answers your question. It's a little bit of a long answer, but I'm hoping it kind of puts some of the bulk into perhaps the passion you hear about what I'm saying.
Oh, absolutely, and maybe you just weren't aware of Morgan State University has a landscape architecture master's program, and so I was just wanting to just make sure everything just was aligned there.
Thank you.
So I'll follow up. I hear what we're trying to accomplish. I'd like to.
Well, I'm currently a resident of Montgomery County. I've had the privilege of working all over the state with many different counties, and working on projects, as have many of my colleagues in the landscape architecture field. I believe that we bring a fresh approach to design.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, additional questions? Seeing none, that concludes hearing on Senate Bill 256. We're going to next go to a piece of legislation from our Department of Information Technology, SB 200. Natalie Evans-Harris. Ms. Harris, why don't you come up? You are the only witness on this bill in terms of in-person testimony. And so, again, Senate Bill 200. So why don't you, since you're the only witness, we're not going to clock you. So why don't you start?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and esteemed members of the committee. For the record, my name is Natalie Evans-Harris, and I'm the state's Chief Data Officer. When I joined the state in May 2024, I was encouraged to see how Maryland was already using data to better understand our communities, measure how well services are working, and explore new ways to support Marylanders in their daily lives. At the same time, it was clear we can do more to coordinate how data is governed, shared, and used across state and local government. The Maryland Council on Open Data was created a decade ago to help ensure government data is accurate, up-to-date, and available to the public. Over the years, the Council has helped increase access to important information for residents, businesses, researchers, and community organizations. But the way the Council is structured today makes it harder to meet our state's growing needs. Right now, local governments and outside partners have limited representation on the Council. That makes statewide collaboration more difficult. The Council is also focused primarily on managing open data portals rather than on broader priorities such as community partnerships, public engagement, and aligning open data with Maryland's overall data strategy. In addition, the State Chief Data Officer does not have a formal leadership role, which makes coordination across agencies more challenging. Senate Bill 200 addresses these challenges. The bill updates the council to better reflect how data is used today. It expands membership to include voices from local government, the private sector, academia, and nonprofit organizations. It also makes the State Chief Data Officer a permanent member and chair, thereby strengthening coordination across state agencies. The bill also broadens the council's responsibilities. It allows the council to advise on statewide data priorities, help build partnerships with communities and service organizations, and connect open data efforts to technology planning and procurement. These changes will help ensure that open data is used responsibly, strategically, and in ways that truly benefit Marylanders. For these reasons, I respectfully ask for your support of Senate Bill 200. Thank you for your time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions for our witness from DeWitt? Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you for all you do. It's really good to see you not in a Zoom box, but actually in person.
Arms and legs.
Yay. I always say kneecaps. Yeah, you have kneecaps. Going from 37 people to 11 is a really big drop.
Mm-hmm.
If there's some people on vacation or ill or something, we're talking about a really small group. Obviously, you're here in support of the bill. Can you just tell us a little more about why such a precipitous drop and how that's going to still work okay for your functioning?
Absolutely. So the 37 members of the council include approximately 26 secretaries across agencies, or their representatives. So what this bill does is acknowledge that those secretaries or their representatives have other means of participating in the governance of state data through our CDO council and through other activities and efforts across the state. So by shrinking it to 11, it actually gives local and county voices a stronger voice on the council and allows for that voice to then come back into the decisions we make across the state.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Senator Heston.
Just wanted to thank our Chief Data Officer and Sarah. They organized a data briefing for us over the summer, which was really well attended, and I thought was really good. We also had a chance to look through this bill, and I think it's a great step in the right direction. We did talk a little bit about there's like 5 like non-government entities on there, and it's kind of loose around how many are private sector, how many are education. So how would you feel about, do you want to explain to the committee how you kind of feel about maybe tightening that up?
I'm definitely open to tightening that up. We intentionally kept it flexible because as the data needs evolve, we wanted the bill to be able to stand and the council to be able to evolve to reflect the needs of Maryland at that moment. But we're definitely open to tightening and being a little bit more definitive around who that membership should be.
Okay, additional questions? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 200. Let's next go to the Office of the Attorney General. DRC Talley. Ms. Talley, why don't you come up? You are the only witness on this piece of legislation, Senate Bill 184. Senate Bill 184.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee. My name is Darcy Talley, and I serve as the Chief of the Environmental and Natural Resources Crimes Unit, which is a part of the Criminal Division of the Office of the Attorney General. Thank you for the opportunity to testify here today. I am here on behalf of the Office of the Attorney General to present Senate Bill 184, which is one of our legislative priorities for the 2026 legislative session. Currently, the Environmental and Natural Resources Crimes Unit has 2 statutory reporting obligations that require the same or similar environmental criminal enforcement information, but that address 2 separate periods of time. The unit is statutorily required to produce an annual report to the Governor and General Assembly on or before November 30th of each year. This covers October 1st of the prior year through September 30th of the reporting year. Additionally, the unit reports criminal enforcement information as part of the Maryland Department of the Environment's annual enforcement and compliance report, which per statute reports enforcement activities, including criminal enforcement activities conducted during the previous fiscal year. The concern is that when it's viewed together, the statistical information provided would not appear consistent. As they currently exist, these dual reporting requirements result in reporting the same enforcement information but for two varied periods of time. The purpose behind Senate Bill 184 is to make uniform the requisite timeframes of two separate statutory reporting obligations to ensure that statistical information of the unit is consistently conveyed. As proposed, the bill would amend State Government Article 6702, subsection D, changing the reporting period to the previous fiscal year, thereby bringing it in line with MDE's annual enforcement and compliance report. Let me explain why the legislation is needed. First, the existing competing statutory obligations create dual reporting requirements that are not aligned in terms of covered time periods, causing duplicative and inconsistent reporting of the same information. Second, the proposed bill aligns the two reporting requirements, combining the covered time frames by amending the unit's annual reporting period to the previous fiscal year, thus better positioning it with the period covered in MDE's annual enforcement report. Third, this minor change will create uniformity, conserve resources, and streamline reporting without sacrificing any of the information or accountability. This will improve the transparency of the unit and further ensure that consistent information is reported and is available to the public. This legislation has been carefully crafted in consultation with the Attorney General's Legislative Affairs Unit, and we believe it strikes the right balance between the competing reporting requirements. So for these reasons, the Office of the Attorney General respectfully urges this committee to give Senate Bill 184 a favorable report, and we appreciate the committee's consideration of this priority legislation. And thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Talley. Questions for the Attorney General's office on Senate Bill 184? Senator Carrozza.
Thank you. Thank you for the bill, and I certainly understand trying to tighten up reporting requirements. I know it's a reporting bill, but it's on the enforcement requires that same or similar environmental criminal enforcement information, which is in the content of the report.
Right.
So, and because I haven't read this report, so this is really a question I just, for informational purposes, does the reporting include, not just the penalties and the enforcement? Does it also indicate if there's been any, if the business or individual made any good faith efforts or worked with the AG's office on any of this, or is it just simply, here's the penalties, here's the enforcement? I'm just trying to get a sense of, sometimes when you have information, it's helpful in addressing policy issues.
Sure, and it's helpful sometimes to point out the distinction. We are part of the Attorney General's criminal division. We're separate and apart from MDE, but the statute requiring MDE's enforcement report specifically requests certain criminal enforcement statistics. And so we're more in line to provide that criminal statistical information. So the number of referrals that might come to our unit, the number of investigations that are opened, the number of cases that are charged, the number of charges, the location of these charges or referrals, and also the outcomes of our criminal cases, as opposed to sort of, maybe, if I understand your question, more of the enforcement or administrative actions that might be taken on behalf of the Department of the Environment.
Okay. So yours is a summary of this information, but it does include the outcomes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, additional questions? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 184. We're going to next go to a series of bills from Senator Simon Eyre. Why don't we start with Senate Bill 215? And Senator, you are the only witness on Senate Bill 215, so as soon as you're ready, you may present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senate Bill 215. This is a follow-up bill to last year's modernization of Maryland's Military Laws Act. I've worked with the Department of Veterans and Military Families and other departments and military advocates with no opposition. Last year, we passed an 8-bill legislative package to modernize, standard, and centralize our laws. However, there were other military bills in 2025 that passed and did not have the access to these new revisions as they weren't law yet. Therefore, this bill brings those other military laws up to the standards adopted last year. This bill does 3 things. 1, it updates the state government article to reflect last year's changes in the transportation article related to non-combat metals on license plates. It centralizes the definition of military protective order in state government article instead of multiple local definitions in several articles. And third, there were other bills that passed last year without having the modernization terms, and it updates those sections. That's the bill. I ask for your favorable consideration.
Okay, questions for Senator Simon Eyre on Senate Bill 215. Senate Bill 215. Okay, seeing none, that concludes the hearing on Senate Bill 215. Senator, why don't we go next to, we'll go in order here, Senate Bill 242. And on this one, we do have some witnesses. We've got, let's see, in person, favorable David Dragic. David, welcome. And there are 2 virtual witnesses signed up favorable. Do we, for the virtual witnesses? Okay, so we'll take your favorable, and then there are some unfavorable witnesses as well. So again, Senator Simon Eyre, Senate Bill 242.
Thank you. I think this is the first bill I've had some unfavorable, but we'll talk about that. Yes, this is Senate Bill 242. The primary focus of this bill gets Maryland into compliance with federal law as it pertains to occupational licenses for service members and their spouses on active duty in our state, and provides tremendous benefits to our military and their families. This nearly 100-page bill was a massive and a comprehensive 8-month effort, and I want to thank all involved, especially DLS drafting team, most notably McKinsey and Jody. In the last week, I have been in discussion with the health boards to discuss a proposed amendment, and we have agreed to the requested amendment. This brings all the health boards to a favorable with this amendment. Just so the committee understands the scope of this bill, I worked with so many, including the Department of Veterans and Military Families, Department of Health and the health boards, Department of Labor, Department of Environment, Department of Agriculture, Department of Transportation, Department of Natural Resources, Department of Education, Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, the Maryland Insurance Administration, the Maryland Bar Association, the Public Service Commission, the Maryland Association of Realtors, the Accountability and Implementation Board, numerous military advocate groups, and other organizations. So to the bill, the Federal Service Members Civil Relief Act, known as SCRA, is designed to ease financial and legal burdens on active duty members during deployment. There have been significant revisions over the year. Senate Bill 242 primarily updates Maryland law to be compliant with the SCRA federal law as it pertains to occupational licenses. In January 2023, the federal SCRA was significantly updated for all states to incorporate changes regarding portability of occupational license for active service members and their spouses. There were additional changes in 2024 and signed into law by President Biden. However, 3 years later, Maryland law is out of compliance with these important revisions. Therefore, this bill revises Maryland with the latest SCR revisions. This is important as other states have been successfully sued for non-compliance. So, this bill does 4 main things. 1, first and foremost, it revises our Maryland laws so they are compliant with the federal SCRA requirements found in 50 United States Code 4025A. Service members and their spouses transferred on military orders will be able to use their home state occupational license and no longer be required to obtain a Maryland license if they meet certain requirements. They will now go through a registration process that ensures they are able to practice in the state. This will be tremendously helpful for our service members and their spouses to start working in our state. There is a set of requirements that must be met, such as having a valid license in a home state, being in good standing, proof that they are on orders, certifying that they meet, understand, and will comply with Maryland license requirements and scope of practice. Additionally, this bill maintains the expedited licensing process to service members and their spouses if they want to practice in Maryland to obtain a license in an area they don't currently have a license. The third thing, this bill removes barriers and expands helping our veterans and spouses get expedited license in health, education, and financial areas to match what was done in the Department of Labor and the business regulations in 2019. Finally, it updates old federal references to SCRA. I could go into much greater detail, but the bottom line, this will get Maryland into compliance with federal law and provide some additional benefits to our veterans and spouses. Besides addressing compliance, this is a major improvement of quality of life for our service members and their spouses. This bill takes great strides in making Maryland more welcoming to our uniformed service members and their families. Now, while I have tremendous support from departments, boards, and advocates, let me address some of the informational letters and a few initial who came in opposed. I've had discussions with all of them, and it's been mainly sharing the federal requirements and details. So for the informational letters, basically some are requesting to be exempted. So I shared with them the federal requirements, and I believe they understand this, and we'll move on from there. There were initially 3 unfavorable. MedChi, I met with them yesterday and shared the amendments and the federal requirements. I also shared that the Board of Physicians is favorable with amendment. I'm anticipating that they'll remove their opposition. The dental group, which you'll hear from later, I shared the amendments with them. I was hopeful, but I think they're still opposed, even being the lone occupation that is opposing this. And lastly, the judiciary, they raised separation of powers issues with the lawyers, as they often do. So I sought DSL counsel and also JPR counsel that deals with separation of power issues. They all said they do not believe this is a separation of powers issue and recommend not amending as they requested. I'm going to rely on their judgment. Conclusion on that is this is just the legislature agrees to disagree. I believe we are close to having all opposition removed. Well, maybe not the judiciary, but they probably would oppose the federal legislation as well. I will keep the committee informed. I'm confident we will get to consensus. If not 100%, it will be 98%, and we must act on this legislation to be compliant with federal law. One last thing, I will talk about the fiscal note. It's relatively modest considering the enormity of what we're doing, but some of them have to update their licensing software or things like that. The Department of Ed said they would cost them about $30,000 to do that. The Department of Labor said it'd take about $12,000. And Judiciary, who is opposing the bill, they said it's going to cost them nearly $200,000, which represents about 75% of the cost of the fiscal note. Take it for what it is. And with that, I will ask for favorable consideration.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Let's just, we'll take the testimony from Mr. Dragic. Next, sir.
Chair Feldman and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify in favor of Senator Simon Ayers' bill. For the record, I'm Dave Dragic, Legislative Director of the Maryland Military Coalition. SB 0242 is another positive step being taken to bring Maryland's code up to date with federal code. This bill helps address the persistent unemployment rates and prevalence of underemployment for spouses of members of the uniformed services, the portability of professional licenses when members and their spouses relocate under official orders. This was significantly addressed by Congress in 2023 when Section 705A was included in that year's NDAA and is now law and part of the federal SCRA that Senator Simon Ayers mentioned. The language in SB 0242 strongly mirrors the language of that section of the U.S. Code. And in addition, this bill goes beyond that section by including veterans, a group that is not included at the federal level. So passing this bill will serve to improve the current processes of our state agencies in issuing new licenses, in recognizing existing licenses or certificates under the SCRA. Just last December, the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division issued a notification letter to all state licensing authorities reviewing changes made to the SCRA in December 2024 and asking these state licensing authorities to evaluate their practices to ensure compliance and address the issue of military spousal unemployment. So for these reasons, the Maryland Military Coalition strongly supports 0242 and asks for a favorable report from the committee. We'd like to thank Senator Simon Eyre for sponsoring this important legislation and appreciate his leadership on the issue.
Okay, thank you. We've got 2 witnesses signed up favorable, virtual. Let's take that testimony, and then we'll take questions. Nikki Ham and Holly Kleiderline. So Ms. Ham, why don't you go, or Dr. Ham, why don't we start with you?
Yes, hi, good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time. Chair and Vice Chair Kagan, members of the Education and Energy Committee, thank you really for taking this time. In the Environment Committee. My name is Nikki Ham. I'm an assistant professor of school counseling at Bowie State University. And I was a former president of the Maryland School Counselor Association, also known as MASCA. I'm testifying to support Senate Bill 242 on behalf of myself and the Maryland School Counselor Association as a member. From an educator and workforce perspective, Senate Bill 242 is really about retaining qualified professionals in Maryland schools and removing unnecessary barriers that contribute to staffing shortages. Maryland continues to face significant shortage of school counselors and offer other student support professionals. And as someone who really prepares our future school counselors and has worked in the field, I really see how the licensure delays really cause significant and renewal requirements really cause unexpected costs for members and can discourage qualified professionals from entering or remaining in the workforce. Military-connected school counselors are particularly impacted. They are often required to relocate quickly and voluntarily, and yet still may face some uncertainty or additional renewal changes. So I think it's very important that Senate Bill 242 offers a targeted temporary workforce solution. It ensures that qualified school counselors are authorized under existing licensure portability provisions and are not subject to duplicative Maryland state or specific renewal requirements. And as ultimately, at the time when Maryland is really focused on student well-being, I, alongside with MASCA, really support a favorable report for this bill.
Okay, Ms. Kleiderline.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Holly Kleiderline, and I'm the legislative chair for the Maryland School Counselor Association. On behalf of MASCA and the professional school counselors we represent, I respectfully urge a favorable report on Senate Bill 242. This bill addresses a disconnect between student mental health needs, workforce shortages, and licensure requirements that create unnecessary delays, duplication, and financial burdens. School counselors are often the first mental health professionals students encounter. We recognize warning signs, provide crisis intervention and short-term counseling, coordinate care, and support students' academic, career, and social-emotional development. Under current law, military-connected school counselors licensed and in good standing in another state may face delays due to the duplicative renewal requirements during relocation to Maryland. Lorenz law requires 15 continuing education hours or 1 semester hour every 5 years, requirements that may already be embedded in our required professional development. The coursework option also creates a financial burden for many school counselors. In January 2025, the State Board acknowledged that renewal rules should allow flexibility, and they amended COMAR through a senior educator waiver. Senate Bill 242 applies that same principle of targeted temporary flexibility to military families. For these reasons, MASCA respectfully urges a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions for the panel of favorable witnesses here, including the sponsor? Yes, Vice Chair Kagan.
You got me. Thank you, Senator Simon Eyre, for your career of leadership on these issues, and thanks to everyone who serves or have served. I have several questions, but I love the bill. I love the concept. First off, am I hallucinating? I thought we passed this bill last year, the year before. Did you Did you reference that, or did the Senate pass it and it died in the House?
No, this is a new one.
It's all new.
Back several years ago, they updated the licensing process to be expedited.
Okay,
They've updated the federal law
Got it.
now that they don't have to be expedited. They just have to allow them to practice here if they meet all the criteria.
got it. And now just some really small technical questions. Someone comes, a spouse or a partner or something comes from another state, and we have reciprocity. I think that's great. There can be similar enforcement as though it were a Maryland person, I assume?
Yes, so they have the authority to protect the public and so forth. When they apply for it, there's a provision that says that they read and understand the requirements to receive this, and that they certify the applicant meets and will comply with our current laws.
Sure. There are some states that have many different expectations, training, CLEs, continuing legal education or training or anything. If someone had moved here from another state and we welcomed them, is there a period of time during which they should amp up their training or make sure that they would comply if they were first applying for their licensure in Maryland?
Right. The Department of Justice has given guidance that if, say, you have continuing education or other requirements that other states don't have, they can require you to do that to allow you to practice here.
In a finite period of time?
Well, you can't practice until you meet that.
That's the right answer. And then the last thing is, it says that it sunsets, sort of, if you're here, then you don't have to keep up your licensure in your other state, your former state. That's in here. We don't expect you to maintain in 2 states.
Where is that?
I will find it. I was on page 17, but I don't know if that's where it is. I'll circle back with you.
Okay.
I was just, yeah.
Yeah, the basic premise is that you have a license in the home state.
Yes.
And it's in good standing and it's active.
Yes.
So if it would not be active in the other state, then you could not continue here.
Right. I think at some point, we don't want you to have to pay to maintain in the old state plus in Maryland. At
Well,
some point, we hope you're going to maybe stay here. but
Well,
who
remember,
knows?
these are on active duty orders, so it's a limited time to begin with.
Yes. All right. I'll find you the place in the bill. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Senator Brooks.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the bill, Senator. The Maryland Judicial Council, they've got, their letter says the judiciary opposes those provisions of Senate Bill 242 that applies to the practice of law. And they say the proposed amendments to business, occupation, and professionals, Title 10 on page 23 to 25, because of the separation of powers concerned. So you said you've had a conversation with them. Are you trying to work that out?
Yes, and thank you for your co-sponsor first.
Sure.
Yeah, so I've tried to reach out to everybody. Obviously, I can't anticipate everybody who would see this online.
Right.
They brought that issue up, and not being a legal scholar, I went to DLS and asked legal counsel what they thought. And they said, we do not believe this is a separation of power issue. We would recommend not amending this out. I took it further and I went to JPR legal counsel, who deals with separation of powers a lot in that committee, and I asked them the same question. And they came back and said, no, we do not believe this is a separation of power. They said, nothing knocking judiciary, but they often put that argument against many bills in JPR, and sometimes they agree with them, sometimes they don't. In this case, the legislature is basically saying we don't agree with that interpretation.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Senator Washington.
Thank you. I would say this is even a broader stroke of revision that I had ever challenged multiple boards at once. So is there one, okay, so a number of these, for example, the psychologists are seeking or asking Maryland to participate in a compact. We have a bill for that. Those compacts would apply to, usually include military personnel, et cetera. Are you aware of those bills? How do they?
At the federal level, which is mirrored in this bill, if you are with a state with a compact, this would not apply.
Right.
So they would continue with their compact agreement. And that's specifically laid out at federal law, which is mirrored in this bill.
I'm not so much worried about the competition with the compact. I'm just wondering if it would serve this purpose. If, I guess sort of inserting across all the boards, you know, this language, many of them have compacts that will already accommodate.
Right, and in the
what
case.
you're trying to do. So I wonder what's missing that's not, you know, in these compacts that we have.
Right, so as you know, if you're putting legislation in, compacts may or may not pass. Not all 50
Fair enough.
states want to be in a compact.
I know I don't want us to be, but yes.
What the federal legislation said, if your state agreed with other states and you became in a compact in a certain occupational area,
Right.
you would abide by those compact rules that you set up between the states, and this would not apply to it. If you weren't in a compact, that's when this would apply.
All right, thank you.
Okay, additional questions? Okay.
Can I jump in here to
Sure.
help answer a question from Senator Brooks? I'm reading from this notification letter from the Department of Justice that they put out on December 22nd. So the question in the letter says, are any licenses excluded? The term license means any license, certificate, or other evidence of qualification that an individual is required to obtain before the individual may engage in or represent himself or herself to be a member of a particular profession. Under the prior version of the law, this is the SCRA, licenses to practice law were explicitly excluded from portability under the SCRA. Under the updated law, all professional licenses and certificates, including law licenses, are eligible for portability.
Okay, well, thank you for pointing that one. Yeah, sure, Senator Washington.
I think to the Vice Chair's point, there are certain occupations that are very much focused just in Maryland law, right? And
When you say
Well,
focused in Maryland, only practice in Maryland?
No, just knowing Maryland law, knowing if you're a psychologist or a school psychologist, knowing the specific types of requirements, in Maryland regulations, all these sort of very specific, which is why I have some of these, have concerns about compacts and some of these portability. So there are some professions that, do you think that there are some professions that don't lend themselves to this sort of writ large acceptance of a license, and that maybe could focus on the ones that have similar, like being a doctor? I mean, there are just certain things that are not specific to a region or a state.
First, I would say the requirement is to know, understand, and comply with Maryland's requirements. Right. But
and how do they demonstrate that?
But more importantly, this is a federal law that we can't pick and choose and say, well, for Maryland, we only want to do this one and this one. The law's out there. Other states have been sued for not complying.
I hear you. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, additional questions? Okay, we do have two witnesses unfavorable. Are they virtual or in person? Okay, Charles, okay, I'm sorry, Charles Doring, guys, okay. Come up here, Mr. Doring, and Natasha Barucha, okay. And Dan Doherty is here. Okay, Dan. Okay, you're the three unfavorable witnesses, and so each of you are on the up to 2-minute clock, and that will be the extent of the testimony in this bill. So who wants to start?
I guess I will, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Doherty, you may begin.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Madam Vice Chair, I'm Dan Doherty here on behalf of the Maryland State Dental Association and the Maryland Society of Oral Maxillofacial Surgeons, respectfully in opposition to Senate Bill 242. First, let me say that it's our opinion that the federal law is non-enforceable under Amendment 10 of the Constitution, which reserves regulatory action such as regulation of occupations, commerce to the states, supported by Supreme Court decisions in the area of commerce. If there is the belief that the federal statute supersedes it, I don't know why you need this bill. You just have the federal law apply. That's the first point. The second point is, and reference was made in answer to your questions, Madam Vice Chair, that there is currently a provision where health occupations must expedite licensure applications for service members, spouses, ex-service members, and spouses of ex-service members. If there is no problem with their qualifications, and we're talking about education, clinical testing, testing of their knowledge of, in our case, dentistry, they must be licensed in 15 days. If there is a problem, then a mentor, and that's my term, is appointed to help them find where to go get whatever qualifications they need and assist them. So we don't think there's a need from that standpoint. One thing I want to make clear, this bill does not license these individuals in Maryland. And if they're not licensed by the Board of Dental Examiners, they have no jurisdiction to discipline, to stop untoward actions, to intervene if they commit a crime. Everything is under the law of the state of licensure. And the Maryland, the amendment would include the scope of practice of Maryland with the scope of practice of the licensing state, but does not give the board any authority except it expands what they can and cannot do. And having Maryland law ignored is really a threat to Marylanders' health, safety, and welfare. And this bill is basically asking you to choose between the military people who get reassigned here and their spouses and the health and safety and welfare of the people of Maryland. And we feel that there's a problem, that this bill has problems that don't protect the health and safety of Marylanders. So with that, I would urge an unfavorable report.
Okay, Ms. Doring, you want to go next? Then we'll.
Thank you. My name is Charles Doring. I am a general dentist in Rockville, Maryland, and a Medicaid provider in the state, and current president of the Maryland State Dental Association. So thank you, the chairman, Madam Chair, and members of the committee for this opportunity just to express my concerns about SB 242. I do feel I'm part of a military family, so this is deep in my heart. My brother's in the Air Force. My godson is a Marine, currently stationed in Africa. I have two staff people that are in the military reserve. One is in the Army and one is in the Air Force that work in my office. And I'm just so proud that I thank them every day. But my concerns relayed by Mr. Doherty is the difference between licensure and a privilege to practice. And I think for the safety of Marylanders and for the regulations that the Maryland State Board of Dental Examiners tells us that the person to be disciplined must have a license. If they don't have the license, if they're practicing without a license, the state board has no authority, and they've told us that time and time again. So that's my concern with this bill, and I thank you for your time.
Okay, Ms. Baruka.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm an orthodontist. My name is Natasha Barucha, and I'm also a Medicaid provider here in Maryland, and I respectfully oppose Senate Bill 242. I want to begin by saying clearly that I support military families. They sacrifice for our country, and we should absolutely make it easier for them to continue their careers when they relocate. And I agree that unnecessary barriers to employment should be addressed. However, I am concerned that the language of this bill raises significant issues related to patient safety, regulatory clarity, and professional accountability. Currently, Maryland law requires dentists to obtain licensure from the State Board of Dental Examiners. Licensure establishes uniform standards for education, training, ethics, and clinical practice, and offers clear accountability to Maryland's laws. This bill would replace this standard with the term individual authorized to practice dentistry, which may include temporary or out-of-state authorizations that may or may not conform to Maryland's licensure requirements. In my practice, orthodontic assistants place wires and adjust appliances under my supervision. That model works because there's one clear line of responsibility. I am licensed by the state board and I am accountable to Maryland standards. If something goes wrong, there's no confusion about who's responsible. If a child develops root damage or bite problems during treatment, patients should not have to wonder which state's rules apply or which board has the authority to intervene. We can support military families without weakening licensure as the foundation of dental regulation. Licensure is not a barrier, but it is the safeguard that protects the very families that we serve. Respectfully, I ask you to preserve that by an unfavorable report on SB 242, or make amendments that preserve Maryland licensure as the standard for supervision and accountability. I thank you all for your time.
Okay, thank you to this panel of unfavorables. Questions for this panel?
I'll take a shot.
We'll go to the sponsor, Senator Simon Ayer.
Thank you for showing up. Now, I dropped this about a month ago, and maybe my office missed it. Have you reached out to me in that month with your concerns?
Excuse me, I personally have not, Senator. And
you've been down here a long time.
I have been down here a long time.
Okay. Now, we reached out to you once we saw the letters. Did you get our amendments?
I did.
Have you had a chance to review them?
I have.
Okay. And are you aware there is a federal requirement that we have to do this as a state?
And yes, I am. And as I said, we think it is unconstitutional under the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution.
Well, other states have been sued successfully to make them implement it. So I haven't heard of any constitutional going the other way. But are you aware the Board of Dental Examiners, which I believe oversees you, has no concerns with this bill as amended?
I've heard that, and I've also heard that they also have problems. So I don't know which is true, Senator, to be honest.
Well, we'll get you clarity on that. Now, some boards and departments have actually implemented this, even though the law is out of compliance. Now, others have not, and they're still out of compliance, and we're trying to bring that in. Are you aware that on the Maryland Health website, you will find the Maryland State Board of Dental Examiners has an application for recognition of out-of-state dental licensures to meet these exact requirements? Basically, they're already doing it. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware that they have reciprocity with some states. I do not know the exact language that is on their website.
Okay, it specifically says to address this SCR federal law. So what you're objecting to is already in practice in Maryland. Your board, or the board that oversees you, is in compliance with this law. What we're trying to do is get it for all and make it standard for all of them. So that might be of interest to you. So just so I can summarize and clarify, knowing that this is a federal requirement, that the Board of Dental Examiners has no concerns and has already implemented this requirement in practice, your association still opposes?
We oppose it, Senator. I'm not sure I can accept or agree with every one of your elements in your argument.
Okay.
The factual basis. I'm not trying to dispute your honesty in saying them. I'm just not sure they are factually correct.
Well, given all the health boards, and you're the only profession here, and all the other ones are on board, it may give an indication that it is truthful.
Dentistry is unique.
Okay, well, just maybe one point, maybe because my former life as a Department of Justice lawyer, that you referenced the 10th Amendment several times, but no, as of right now, there's no court that's actually taken that up or this issue's been litigated where the 10th Amendment has been a barrier to, I mean, just since you've repeated it several times.
And I don't disagree with that, Senator, and I know that the Senators reference cases where they have, the federal government's been successful, but I don't know if that was raised as a defense, and you know if they don't raise the defense, it doesn't get decided.
Okay, but if it wasn't raised, that in and of itself, okay, we don't have to debate that. Any additional questions for the panel? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, that concludes Bill here on Senate Bill 242, which brings us to our third Simon Ayer bill, Senate Bill 243, and we have Senator, we've got one virtual witness, Dr. Kashina Cross. Is Ms. Cross on the queue? Okay, Senator, you present the bill. We'll bring in Ms. Cross virtually, and then we'll take up the last bill of the day. But we're on Senate Bill 243.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, out of respect for the committee, most of these are written testimony for you. I've worked to coordinate with the Department of Veterans and Military Families who's supporting all four of these bills, and you should have letters. I've worked with the University System of Maryland, USM, the Maryland Association of Community Colleges, Maryland Higher Education Commission, and military advocates on this consensus legislation. This bill lines up with the mission of the Department of Veterans and Military Families. The overall objective of this bill is to include uniformed services spouses where, one, the veteran or service member already is receiving these benefits, and it is appropriate and good state policy recognizing the spouse's contribution to the state and nation. The goal is to honor military spouses and build on making Maryland military families friendly in this state. So what's this bill do? 4 specific things. First, it allows legislative scholarships to Maryland active duty service members while deployed out of the state. That's current law. This would allow the accompanying spouse to also be eligible for that scholarship. Current law provides higher education priority course registration for active duty service members. This bill would allow the spouse's priority as well. Current law requires community colleges to assist veterans with enrollment, available services, and use of resource center. This bill would include assisting veteran spouses. And then finally, current law provides enabling authority for hiring preferences to veterans, service members, and their spouses in state and local government. This bill standardizes the language in these sections, including outing spouses in one section that was missing. That's the bill, and I ask for your favorable consideration.
Okay, let's pull up your virtual witness, Dr. Cross, and then we'll take questions. Okay. Dr. Cross, who also is a councilwoman at large at Glen Arden. So Dr. Cross, you are going to be on the 2-minute clock. You've signed up favorable, and you can proceed. Unmute yourself, though.
Thank you so much. To Mr. Chair.
Okay, we hear you. You go. Dr. Cross, can you hear me? You can go. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'm getting some feedback here. I feel like I'm in a boxing ring. Can I get my 2 minutes started over again?
You can. I mean, and also if you have a YouTube somewhere in your house, that'll cause it too. So make sure nothing else is on, but we'll start you on the 2 minutes now.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. And look, I rise in strong, unequivocal support for Senate Bill 243, the Uniformed Services Spouses Act. This legislation not only recognizes the fundamental truth that military life, service life, is never born without a service member alone. It is carried by the entire family. During my more than 2 decades of service in the United States Air Force, including multiple deployments, my role as Deputy Chief there in Iraqi Transition Explosive Ordnance Disposal Forces, I witnessed firsthand the mission readiness that begins at home. When spouses are denied access to education, employment, and professional advancements, it frequently ends with even divorces or even mental health crises at home and frequent relocations and policy gaps that cost paid service members tons of time away from work and units, ultimately our nation's its security forces. Senate Bill 243 takes a meaningful action in extending priority registration, educational resources, and scholarship eligibility. Now, on the other end of retirement as a yellow ribbon survivor of 5 combat tours to war. I can tell you that it is such an honor to have not only my children and my husband able to receive the support from our veteran resources through the Veterans Administration. Hiring professional spouses, active duty service members, veterans, these provisions do not create special privileges. They establish the equality of families who have already sacrificed stability warranted to our nation and opportunities, the continuation of service to this country. For these reasons, I respectfully urge a favorable report to Senate Bill 243.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cross. Questions for the sponsor, Senator Simon Ayer or Dr. Cross? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the bill here on Senate Bill 243, which brings us to our final bill of the day. Back to you, Senator Simon Ayer. I'll bring up, this is Senate Bill 301, Mr. Dragics, Mr. Zarzecki, Larry? I know you as Larry, not you suspended. Okay, we do have one virtual witness. Again, Dr. Cross is back on the queue, so you can bring her up. That's the extent of the witnesses on this bill. Senator Simon Ayer, Senate Bill 301.
Thank you. And you have my testimony in your folder, so I'm just going to talk off the cuff here. This is Senate Bill 301, Veterans Discount Act. Now, this is my last year. I've been down here 20 years. I've tried to really work on veterans issues, if you haven't noticed. And I saw last year there was a bill that put in a discount for veterans in a certain area, and I know they've done it for other things, and they give them free this or that and that. So I said, are there other areas where we could apply that? And I started looking into that, and then I reached out to the AG and I said, what if we have a statute that says it costs $200 and we want to give a discount to a veteran and say, whatever. Can they do that? We can do it in regulation. If the fees are set in regulations, you can change the regulations. But what if it's set in statute? And so I talked with some departments and they came back and said, we've run into this situation where an emergency comes up or a situation and we're hampered that we can't give a discount or waive it or whatever because it's in statute. It's $200. So I reached out to the AG and I said, can you give me your legal opinion on this? Can they do it? And they came back, as they always do, and very thorough, and they said sometimes, but many times you can't. And so the clearest path forward was to set up a framework to give authority when a fee is set in statute that a department or a board could give a discount. Now, I talked with drafting and all that, we wanted to put some guardrails up so that it just wouldn't be willy-nilly. So we actually put in there that they would have to adopt regulations to do this and go through the process. And I know we have a wonderful chairman in here that deals with regulations. And I also realize the fiscal situation we're in. So this bill does not mandate any fees. It just gives the authority. It's enabling so they can do it. And so what I did is I looked through the law and saw there's so many places where there are fees. So I came up with a basic structure and said, what would be impactful for veterans? And tried to get it to where it was like at least $50, because if it's only $5, why give them a discount? So I came up with the top 100. Now I was going to name this the 100 Veterans Discount Enabling. Then I said, Senator Brooks might amend this to add one in and mess up my title. So I didn't put the 100 in there. So basically what this does, it just sets up a framework to give authority so that they can do that. Does it mean everyone's going to get a discount? No. Does it mean that you have the capability to do it when you're outside of session and you can go through regulations? Yes. We see it in the private sector. It's a way to honor our veterans. And so this is just kind of modeled after that. And when I'm long gone, this will still be there. And you all have to come back in every session and say, I want to do this one, or I want to do this one. You have to get buy-in from the board. You have to get buy-in from the departments. They have to make their case that this wouldn't hurt their funds in a sufficient manner that they couldn't perform their duties and so forth. So again, it's enabling, setting up the structure. I'm an engineer. That's what I do. And that's the bill.
Okay, let's just mix. Mr. Dragics, why don't you go next, and then we'll take Mr. Zarzecki.
All right, thank you, Chair Feldman and members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to testify in favor of this bill from Senator Simon Ayer. And for the record, I'm Dave Dragics, Legislative Director of the Maryland Military Coalition. Veterans are among those disproportionately impacted by occupational licensure policy. With interstate locations, when they do relocate, and a propensity for employment in licensed occupations, veterans are particularly affected by licensure fees, which must be paid to keep a license active or upon relocation to a new state. This adverse impact is exacerbated by the potential for required licensure over a career in a licensed occupation. Even if Maryland offers a less restrictive license portability policy or expedited licensure, fees remain a barrier. So SB 0301 addresses this problem by enabling state departments and agencies to waive a required fee in whole or in part for a veteran. Passing this bill is further recognition of those who have served in uniform and deserve this benefit. For these reasons, the Maryland Military Coalition strongly supports SB 0301, asks for a favorable report from the committee. And once again, we'd like to thank Senator Simon Eyre for sponsoring this important legislation and appreciate his leadership on this issue.
Okay, Ms. Orzecki.
Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, committee members. Question: what does this bill actually do? Well, it authorizes state licensed agencies, licensing and regulatory departments to reduce fees that don't really mandate waivers. Well, they don't mandate waivers, but put permits and agencies to other after adopting regulation and standards. So they're not setting fees. It's giving them the authority to reduce the amount of fees. It also helps with licensing, reviewing, obtaining occupational licensing, reviewing certifications, registering small businesses, and pursuing certified or certification of different trades. This bill supports veteran employment to lighten the financial burdens. Also, importantly, it does not require agencies to waive fees, but enables relief when administratively doable. For these reasons, we ask for a favorable review from this committee.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Dr. Cross. She'll be the final witness on this bill and for the day. Dr. Cross, you have 2 minutes on Senate Bill 301, and you're signed up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. And I am so honored again to represent those who have served these armed forces. As a municipal advocate myself and local leader, I'm Dr. Kashina A. Cross, and I respectfully stand for a strong support of Senate Bill 301 Veterans Discount Act. This bill does authorize the state agencies, again I say authorizes, to waive applications, licensing, and renewal fees for veterans. Now, I had the unique pleasure of getting my licenses to see Maryland state parks. And I thought it was such a wonderful thing to be able to go to the natural parks and take my children to see nature. And the beautiful thing about it was it wasn't that big of a cost. So we're not talking something astronomical, only to find out that, again, this is something that we across multiple professional and occupational sectors can do. Senators, I believe this is something we can do. The fees can range from a modest amount, even maybe several thousands. But again, we're just authorizing the opportunity, and then you can state your criteria as well within those various different departments or agencies. So transitioning service members, this cost can delay entry into, again, workforce and entrepreneurship opportunities, and I key in on entrepreneurship opportunities because that adds to the fiscal opportunities of the state of Maryland. Anytime we can provide entrepreneurial support. So Senate Bill 301 does remove barriers. This is a workforce policy, an economic mobility policy, and a veteran retention policy. And this is something that adds safety back into the state of Maryland. Your American veterans have served this nation, and we serve continuously, even when we retire. Military benefits, when our veterans come, move in swiftly with licensed professions, open businesses, and they continue to contribute. We can train others as we have served. And now, if you remove this unnecessary friction from success, for this reason, I respectfully request favorable report for Senate Bill 301.
Any questions for Senator Simonaire or the three favorable witnesses? Seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 301. That concludes our bill hearings for today. Folks, let's take about a 10-minute break or thereabouts, and we'll come back. We've got 8 or so bills on a voting list that we're going to address, and so I think I will see you back here in about 10 minutes or so.
See you next week.
And that will conclude.